Hey, what's up everybody? True Boxing here. Thank you for coming back to Get Hit with the Truth. So today doing the final champions report. This is on the WBC division, our governing body, the title belt. That's the green belt. That's probably the most recognizable belt of all the four. With my champions reports, we do 122 pounds all the way to heavyweight. I discuss all the titles and champions that are within those, those four right there. And, within those, within all those 12 divisions. Talking about the champions and and what they're doing is a big deal because, the champions rule the sport still. That's still how it works, People think because there's all these alphabet titles that it takes something away, and it does, but at the end of the day, they still rule the sport of boxing with title fights, and lately the belts have been even more significant because you have a lot of the champions are trying to become unified and undisputed belt holders. We have a lot of unified champions. We have 2 undisputed champions right now, so they're getting more prominent again, and so discussing all these governing bodies is a big deal because it could potentially lead to bigger fights down the road. So let's kick it off for the WBC belt with the 122-pound super bantamweight division, that title, that is currently held by the undefeated and unified champion, Stephen Fulton Jr. He holds both the WBC and WBO titles. He unified those belts, capturing a WBC belt with his WBO title in November when he scored his career best win, a hard-fought but what most people feel deserving majority decision over Brandon Figueroa in a very good and very close fight. I mean, they went at it. It was a good one. People wanted to see an undisputed title fight for Stephen Fulton against Marajan Akhmadaliev, who holds the IBF and WBA belts. They wanted to see that title fight next, but Akhmadaliev has mandatories due. He's going to be going and fighting in that direction. So that leaves, a couple potential options. Really, there's only a couple. One is a potential rematch with Brandon Figueroa, if Figueroa wants that. Figueroa totally hinted around prior to the fight and after that 126 was likely going to be what he was going to do next. But given the fact that he lost a very close fight, will he try to stay at 122 and go after revenge over Stephen Fulton? We will see. Stephen Fulton is down to run it back. He said that. The other option is Daniel Roman, the former unified champion, who is the #1 contender to both titles that Stephen Fulton has. I think that's the direction that Stephen Fulton's going to go in right there. I think he's going to end up fighting Daniel Roman next for sure, in my opinion. And I firmly believe by the next champions report in early April, we're going to have a date and that fight's going to be confirmed to go. Roman, I think last fight, I don't hold it, but I think September was the last time he fought. And as I said, Stephen Fulton won his last fight in unified belts at the end of November. So I think about 4 or 5 months off for Stephen Fulton should be good. The max would be 6 months, which would be May. So I think around April, May area, we're going to see Stephen Fulton and Daniel Roman for the unified title. But that's just my opinion. 126 featherweight. The champion there, the newly crowned champion, is the undefeated Mark Magsayo of the Philippines. He pulled off the biggest win of his career in January and upset Gary Russell Jr., who was fighting, with an injury. At least that's what it appeared to be what happened and why he lost his belt. He got a close majority decision and captured the belt. Now, Gary Russell, there was no rematch clause in the contract. Gary Russell, he may or may not get Magsayo back in the ring, but I doubt the fight's going to happen next. I really believe the WBC is going to order Magsayo to fight undefeated former 122-pound champion Ray Vargas next, who's the #1 contender. There's a lot of talks about, Leo Santa Cruz came out after he got a victory last weekend, February 5th, and said that he would like to unify belts with Magsayo. The problem is Santa Cruz is tied to fighting the winner of Lee Wood and Michael Conlon, who are fighting for the regular title, the regular WBA belt in March. So he's supposed to fight the winner of that, and then the WBC is likely going to order Magsayo to fight Ray Vargas. So I think that's what's going to happen. I don't think we're going to have a finalized fight, but we might by early April for Vargas and Magsayo, but we'll see. We'll see. At the very least, I think we're going to have some direction about whether that fight's going to happen for sure or not come the next Champions Report. So next, we're going to look at the 130-pound super featherweight title, which is currently held by Oscar Valdez, the undefeated WBC champion. Well, what we know is that Valdez is supposed to be, it looks almost rock solid that he's going to be attempting to unify belts against fellow undefeated champion, the WBO title holder, Shakur Stevenson of the United States. Valdez is said to still be in the process of signing a contract, even though I read a report just today saying that he's already signed. They're just waiting on Shakur Stevenson. But I believe this fight is going to pop off by the end of April. I think it's April 23rd or April 30th, what they're looking at. And by the next Champions Report, that fight should be right around the corner. So I will give my prediction then. But it looks like that fight's going to be happening. Next up is the 135-pound lightweight championship, which is currently held by the undefeated and unified champion, George Kambosos Jr. George Kambosos holds 3.5 of the 4 titles. I say 3.5 because he has the WBC franchise belt, but is recognized as the champion at 135. And then there's Devin Haney, who also holds the WBC title. Both are considered to be that. Both Kambosos and Haney are considered to be the WBC champion. So I kind of see it as a half and half. Well, right now, the talks are that Kambosos is very likely going to be fighting Devin Haney or Vasily Lomachenko in his next fight. The snags that are holding it up for the WBC are for the Devin Haney and Kambosos undisputed title tilt, is that it is said to be payment stuff, but I really don't think that's his number one priority is to fight Devin Haney. I think Kambosos really wants to fight Vasily Lomachenko next. That's a bigger fight, and I think that's what's going to happen. If that's the direction he goes in, where does that leave us? Where does that leave Devin Haney, the WBC kind of regular champion? I don't know, but I believe by the next Champions Report in early April that, and this is just me based on the knowledge that I have and what I'm guessing is going to happen based on that knowledge, is I believe the Lomachenko and Kambosos fight is going to happen, and then Devin Haney's going to have to fight somebody else. So I'm leaning towards Haney maybe fighting somebody along the lines of what's the guy's name? Yvan Mendy from France, because I don't think there's going to be a lot of top 5, top 10 guys signing on dotted line to want to fight Haney next. But again, by early April, the next Champions Report, we should have some more clear direction on what's going to happen. Next is the 140-pound junior welterweight championship, which is currently held by the undefeated and undisputed world champion, Josh Taylor. He holds all 4 belts. He's set to return Saturday, February 26th in the main event of an ESPN card when he takes on the undefeated WBO mandatory challenger, Jack Catterall. I think Taylor's going to go in there and blitz Jack Catterall, dominate him, break him down, and stop him in the late rounds. Catterall has not been in the ring with anybody even close to Taylor. And I think unless Taylor overlooks Jack Catterall, we're going to see Taylor retain his undisputed championship and defeat Catterall. And then maybe by early April, we'll at least have some direction on what Taylor's going to be doing next following that victory. But we'll see. Again, February 26th on ESPN, the undisputed junior welterweight title will be on the line. Next is the 147-pound welterweight title, which is currently held by the undefeated and unified welterweight champion Errol Spence Jr. Spence holds both the WBC and the IBF welterweight titles. From what we know, Spence is almost for sure going to be attempting to unify belts against Yordano Sugas in April. Both have agreed that they have agreed to the fight in principle, and Errol Spence came out shortly after and said that fight is going to take place in April. So that's what we know right now. I'm really looking forward to it. I think that's a really good matchup. It's going to bring together 3 of the 4 belts. I believe by the next Champions Report in early April, we're going to know the date, and it's going to be right around the corner for Spence and Ugas to unify titles. 154 super welterweight. The champion there is the undefeated unified champ, Jermell Charlo. Charlo is good to go for March 19th on Showtime. He's going to attempt to become the undisputed super welterweight champion again when he rematches the undefeated WBO champion, Brian Castano. They fought last July. Great toe-to-toe battle. They went back and forth. Very good ebb and flow in that one. Changing of the tide. It was a big fight for the undisputed crown. They both threw it out there. But when the smoke cleared, it was declared a draw, and both guys retained their world titles. So Charlo, who holds the WBC, IBF, and WBA belts, is looking to become undisputed against Castano, who is very hungry. A lot of people, myself included, felt Castano pulled out a close win in their first fight. Now he can leave no doubt and go in there. This fight will happen before the next champions report. I'm picking Brian Castano again to pull off the victory. But I really do feel that Charlo can win this fight. I believe it could go to a decision and either guy can win. I believe it can end by knockout for either guy. I think more likely if it goes to the scorecards, Castano's going to pull it out. More likely if we see a knockout, Charlo's going to pull it out. But we'll see. Again, both these guys are hungry, and I'm really looking forward to the undisputed title tilt on Saturday, March 19th in the main event on Showtime. Charlo versus Castano 2. 160 middleweight. The champion there is the undefeated Jermell Charlo. Charlo is looking at a showdown, a potential showdown with Canelo Alvarez right now. Charlo is the WBC middleweight champion, and right now he looks to be the front runner to land the Cinco de Mayo weekend title fight against the pound-for-pound king Canelo Alvarez, which he would move up to 168 and challenge Canelo for the undisputed super middleweight title. So that's going to cover middleweight and super middleweight. Now, where does that leave the, where does that leave if that happens? Where does that leave the WBC title? I personally feel that we're going to know by the next champions report that Charlo's giving up the belt, moving up to 168, and then they're probably going to negotiate either Jermell Charlo moving up in weight if he beats Brian Castano. Maybe he moves up to 160 to fight for the vacant belt, maybe against Jaime Munguia. If not that, then I think Munguia and Carlos Adames are going to be good to go for the vacant title next. But I'm not sure any of that's going to be worked out by the next champions report in early April. But that's just a speculation that I believe that could happen. 168 is Canelo Alvarez. As I said, I believe Canelo is going to be defending his undisputed title against Jermell Charlo next in early May. That seems to be where everybody's leaning and what most people want to see. I think other options are him, potentially moving up to cruiserweight, but the way Ilunga Makabu looked in his last fight in January, he didn't look great. I just don't see Canelo moving up to that weight and fighting him. Not next anyway, so I'm going to scratch that. But Canelo also has been offered a 2-fight deal by DAZN to move up and challenge for the light heavyweight title against Dimitri Bivol, and then after that, take on Triple G in September. So right now, Canelo's weighing a lot of things, but I really believe he's leaning towards and he's going to decide on Jermell Charlo come May. And by the next champions report, we should have that confirmation, at least whatever he's doing next. So we'll see. 175 light heavyweight. WBC title belongs to the undefeated unified champion Arthur Beterbiev. He holds both the WBC and the IBF light heavyweight titles. Right now, he's very close to signing a unification bout with American Joe Smith Jr., who's the WBO champion. Right now, it's just a matter of finalizing a deal based on money. Joe Smith wants a little bit more. He wants $1.8 million instead of $1.5. I believe the two sides are going to work the deal out, and by the next champions report, we're going to have a unification light heavyweight title fight in the mix for the summer between Beterbiev and Joe Smith Jr. So we'll see. 200 pounds cruiserweight. The champion there is still Ilunga Makabu. He successfully defended his title in controversial fashion on January 29th when he defeated Tabiso Mushunu. That was a mandatory WBC title fight for Makabu. The winner would potentially get Canelo, that was the idea. But Canelo, prior to that, started started leaning towards Charlo as his next potential opponent. At least his people, Eddie Reynoso in particular, started leaning towards fighting Charlo next instead. With the way Makabu looked in that fight against Mashunu, he did not look great. And I really believe that Canelo's going to put the winning a championship, becoming the first Mexican to win a championship in 5 different weight classes, he's going to put that on hold for right now and wait around for a bigger fight down the road. But I think he's going to handle some business at 168 instead. That would leave Makabu with, we don't know. I know there was another mandatory due, like Alexei Papin was supposed to be the other mandatory to Makabu's belt. Haven't heard anything on that, but I'm not sure by the next champions report if Makabu is not going to fight Canelo. I'm not sure if we're going to know what he's going to do next following, come the next champions report in early April. We'll see. And finally, at heavyweight, the WBC champion is the undefeated Tyson Fury. Fury, we know, is almost for sure going to be fighting Dillian Whyte next. They actually only have a couple more weeks to determine the date and the site for the fight, as the purse bid was won. It was the highest paying purse bid of all time for any fight that went to purse bid. And it was won with, I think it was $41 million by Frank Warren, the co-promoter for Fury. Both guys are going to get paid a lot of money. I think Fury's making $29 million on this fight, and Dillian Whyte's making 7 or 8. So big paydays coming for both these guys. Mandatory title fight by the next champions report. This fight should be on the schedule and good to go. Really looking forward to it. I think that's a good matchup right there for both guys, and we'll see what happens. So that's what I got. That's the champions report for the WBC. Again, another division where we should have a lot more clarification and know a lot more about what's happening with these world title fights come early April. But we got a massive one on the horizon for the undisputed super welterweight title on March 19th between Jermell Charlo and Brian Castano in their much anticipated rematch. So that's it. That's the champions report. I hope you guys enjoyed it. True Boxing, you've been hit with the truth.